Hi, I'm Deb Perlman and welcome back to the Smitten Kitchen. Today I'm making a recipe that you have requested almost more than any other recipe for me to demo. It is my best challah or egg bread and I can't wait to show you how I make it. It's challah time. Woo! So challah is a traditional bread that's used in Jewish cooking, and it's often served at ceremonies and high holidays, not Passover, and it's very traditional for Shabbat. I like all enriched breads, but challah is so cool because you get to braid it and you get this really cool shape that's traditionally pulled apart with your hands. So we have all-purpose flour, lukewarm water, 2 eggs, some neutral oil, or you can use olive oil. I'm using instant yeast today, or you can use active dry yeast. Sugar. I'm using some fine sea salt today. So I'm gonna start in a stand mixer bowl. I'm gonna add water, a little bit of sugar, and we're gonna add the yeast. All right, I'm gonna whisk these things together. It already smells bready. And then we're adding 2 large eggs. We're gonna add a little bit of vegetable or olive oil. And we are going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar or honey. I'm using sugar today. This is in addition to the sugar that we started the recipe with. That was just to kind of help the yeast wake up a little bit. I'm going to use 1½ teaspoons of salt. You don't want to add salt directly to fresh cake yeast, but it's absolutely fine for any kind of dried yeast. I'm going to whisk these together one more time just to beat the eggs. You can of course use the whisk attachment to your stand mixer if you have one, but I just find hand whisking eggs faster. And we are adding 4 cups of all-purpose flour. If you have bread flour, you can use it, but I don't find the additional gluten necessary in any way to make good challah. We've got all the ingredients in here, and we're using the dough hook to bring it together into a dough. And once it starts to come together like this, we're gonna knead it for 5 to 8 minutes. What it's doing is it's working the gluten, which is the protein in the flour, and it's helping it kind of relax and stretch out so you get those nice stretchy strands that we love in bread. This can definitely be kneaded by hand. It's a little bit sticky, so it might feel stressful, but I want to advise you, I want to urge you, I want to beg you to not add more flour when you knead it by hand just to make the dough more comfortable to work with. When you add too much flour, you're going to end up with a stiff, dry bread, and we don't want that. So this is the dough after it has been kneading for 5 to 8 minutes, and you can see that it's definitely a very stretchy, sticky dough. It's really going to depend a bit on the weather. It's going to depend a bit on how you measure and weigh your flour, but sometimes it needs up to 2 to 4 tablespoons more flour. We just put in 4 cups. My hunch is, based on how much this still feels to me almost like a batter, I'm gonna go put in a couple more tablespoons right now. I'm going to just knead it back in for a minute until it's all absorbed. And now this is closer to what I'm looking for, which is to say it's sticky, but it's not like stretching across. We are going to transfer it to an oil bowl. I just sprayed this lightly with a non-stick spray. I'm gonna set this aside for about 1 hour or until it's doubled. I'm gonna cover it with a towel, or you can use plastic wrap. So this is the challah dough, and it's been rising for about an hour. You can tell that it's doubled nicely because not just from the sides, which you can see is twice as high up in the bowl. And this is a really great way to check, is you take your 2 fingers and you press it in, and you're looking for that indentation to stay. And here it stayed, which is a good sign that it's properly doubled. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of flour on my hands. I am pressing this down after the first rise, and I'm gonna let it rise a second time before we start shaping it. That'll take about 30 minutes for it to double again. I'm gonna cover it up, and we'll come back and visit in a little while. So here we are, and it's risen another 30 minutes, and it's just about doubled again, not exactly. But I wanna talk to you real quick about these 3 rises because I learned this technique from Joan Nathan. She also uses 3 rises in her challah bread. First one is that first time when we doubled it. This is the second time where we gave it another ½ hour after pushing it down. And the third one's gonna be after we braid it, which we're gonna do next. The result of these 3 rises is that you're gonna have this incredible, rich, crumb and perfect texture that I feel like is unlike any other challah I've made or bought. Now you can braid challah so many different ways. You can do a basic 3-strand braid. There's a very classic 4-strand braid. There's a 6-strand braid, and you can just keep going up. I think the 6-strand gives you a very elaborate, stunning braid that looks much more complicated than it is for the fewest number of additional strands. Some people flour their counter, some people oil their counter. I've always been team flour, but sometimes I switch it up. That was a good one. So I have a very fancy method of cutting this into 6 equal parts. Are you ready? It's straight up geometry. I find that like starting with a wedge, it's easier to see it as a pie rather than actually like cutting it up and like weighing each piece. So we have approximately 6 fairly equal pieces. So we're gonna roll each out into a rope. Longer strands, you can get more knots and bumps and twists in your braid, and you can also make, if you keep it stretched out, a longer loaf. Shorter strands, you'll have fewer twists, so maybe it's a little less elaborate, but it's sort of chunky and cute. I generally go for 1/2 to 3/4 inch thick rope that's about, I would say, 12 to 14 inches per piece. The next step is I'm going to pinch these together at the top, all 6 together. All right, so outside right over 2, second from the left to the far right, far left over 2, and then second from the right to the far left. And now we're going to repeat the process. Outside right over 2, second from the left to the far right, outside left over 2, second from the right to the far left. I'm pinching the ends together, tapering them a bit, and then I'm going to tuck it under, which gives you a nice end shape. I'm going to do that with the front end too. Pinch it together, flatten it out a little bit, and tuck it under. Booyah. All right, going to just pick it up, transfer it to a baking sheet. I'm going to make the egg wash, just beat a single egg. A trick I've picked up over the years is that if you brush the loaf twice, you get twice the shine in color, which I think is twice as pretty. So I'm going to brush it the first time right now, and then the bread is going to rise its 3rd time, the final rise for 1 hour. We're going to brush it one more time right before it goes in the oven. Now that it's proof for another hour, you can see it's a little bit puffier. We're going to do one more egg wash. We're going to put a little bit of seeds on, and then we're going to bake it. There's a large range in baking time for challah. It can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and I know that sounds crazy, but the fact is that every time you braid a dough, it's gonna come out a little bit differently. If it's longer and thinner, it's gonna take less time. And if it's squatter and taller, it's gonna take more time. The best thing to do is to check early and see if it's done. Old-fashioned bread bakers, they pick up the bread and they tap it underneath and they look for a hollow sound. You can also use a thermometer. That's the most reliable way. As soon as it hits 190 degrees Fahrenheit inside, it's baked. Because this is on the longer, thinner side, I'm gonna go ahead and check it right before 30 minutes, and I'm also gonna rotate the pan once as I'm baking it just for even color. Woohoo! Nailed it! Did it! So here is our challah. We finished baking them last night. It was quite late. There were no cameras rolling. Before we cut into it, I wanted to just go over one question that comes up a lot about when you're making challah at home, and that is how to make this schedule work for you, because it's kind of a long process, these rises. Even though they're hands off, you might be trying to figure out how you're going to work it into your regular life. And for that, I want you to use the fridge. Think of the fridge like a pause button. At the start of any of the rises, you can put this bread dough in the fridge, nicely wrapped so it's airtight, and let it do its work there. So you can have it in the fridge for just a few hours, overnight, or up to 24 hours. When you're ready to move on and finish the recipe, you pull it out and you pick up where you left off. All right, we're going in. Look how beautiful this is. It's just stretchy and so rich, and it smells incredible. I'm more of a center person, so I'm gonna go in there. Oh my God, so good. So good. You might, in a more traditional Jewish Sabbath, you might pull off a piece and then pass the bread to the next person and have a nice, beautiful chunk like this, which tastes just as good. I hope you liked the video, and I hope you subscribe, because we have another really cool recipe coming for you next week, and you're gonna love it.